There's a bench in my laboratory that taught me something I really didn't want to learn. For years, a technician sat at that bench. I brought him into my lab myself, and I sponsored him to come to this country. And I taught him maybe almost everything I had in me in the time that he was there. The stuff you can show a man with your hands, and you can only pass along by working next to him for some sort of time. And somewhere along there, I stopped thinking of him as the guy at that bench and thinking of him as maybe someone that could carry this on after me. And then one morning he walked in and I recognized that that would be the last time. That bench was going to be empty. And guys, I'm not going to dress that up. It really was difficult for me. It hurt. Not the way you lost a case or disappointed a client or missed a due date. It was way deeper than that. You see, when you build a man up to carry what you've built and he decides to walk out that door, you just don't lose a technician. You lose a version of the future that maybe you already started living in. And guys, if you've been listening to my show for a while, you've heard of him. I never said his name, but he's been there in all the episodes that whole time. That empty bench, the one who left. And every time I talked about what we hand down to the trade and what it costs us, maybe I was talking about him. Some of you guys figured that out a long time ago, and you never called me out on that, and I appreciate that. It's very difficult at times when we reflect on these things, but today, I'm done talking around him. His name is Minh Tran, and he runs his own laboratory now. He's in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and he teaches, he builds. He gives everything he knows away for free. And guys, maybe that sounds a little familiar to you. I hope it does. And for a long time, I believed that maybe that empty bench was the end of the story. And guys, I was wrong about that. It took me years to finally come to terms with it, but today, you're going to hear it the way I heard it. Minh Tran, welcome to Margins and Meaning.
Thank you, John.
Well, I tell you, Minh, it's been a long time coming, and I'm excited about the opportunity to share some time with you and really get a flavor for your time at Sunrise. But first, let's take a little backstory here and talk a little bit about your start in dental technology. I'm not looking for a lineage. I think the best part for us to start at is, when did dental technology stop being just your job and started being maybe what you identified as yourself in?
So, yeah, very much. I don't really want to spend too much time talking about myself. You can find me in all the usual places online. So, the usual bio, you can find them anywhere. And I'm hopefully my notoriety precedes me a little bit, and people know most of my story already. But but that question is very compelling, John, and the fact that there comes a point where you switch from just being a job or being a career or something that you punch the clock in, and you think about it and say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna take this seriously. I'm gonna make a career out of this. I'm gonna take it a little bit further than maybe just something that I do every single day, slinging teeth. And that really for me was a moment when I decided that I was gonna pursue my registration. I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to make a career out of it and just really focus on that. So I went and challenged my exams. There was a whole kind of convoluted process to that, but it was really interesting. I think it was one of the best things I ever did for my career. Where before I was really just a CAD technician, there was always this connotation, kind of negative connotation of a gamer off the streets, playing with the computer, making copings or just designing simple things. And I really wanted to break out of that kind of shell and kind of take things a little bit further, right? So really pursuing my education, my examinations, everything like that really gave me a more comprehensive understanding of dental technology, and just incorporating all of the additional disciplines like removables, ortho, and just taking that to the next level has really helped me with everything that I do today, really.
Yeah, I know that both you and I really connect with education, and I think that a lot of times in much of this trade, it's something that is done for, that self-satisfaction, for growth, and for wanting to be better, to realizing we don't have all the answers. So I applaud you for getting your RDT. It wasn't something that was mandated. You actually chose to do that. And I think that it would be interesting really quickly just to share the commonalities between the CDT system and being an RDT and how much deeper it may be. Because I guarantee there's many people in the States that are unfamiliar with the path to become registered.
Yes, exactly. So the CDT in the US is like a certification. It's not a legal requirement to practice, where in Canada and each of our provinces, we are legally required to be registered as a regulated health professional. The other big difference is with your CDT certification, you can be certified in one single discipline, right? So you can either be ceramics, removables, dentures, implants. They have a new digital technician pathway as well. In Canada, in order to be registered, you really do need to demonstrate proficiency in all five disciplines. So you need to go challenge written and practical exams in all of the five, right? So it's a little bit more comprehensive, and that's why I said it's probably one of the best things I ever did, because my understanding of occlusion, of function, of setups, uh, and just taking it very seriously, and the fixed pros, the all on X's that we specialize in today, that is invaluable. Denture occlusion principles are absolutely invaluable. If you're, a crown and bridge technician who's hopping into All on X, I highly recommend picking up a book about denture occlusion and principles at the very least, because it's very, very important to understand, balanced occlusion in order to really set things up so they function properly and protect the implants beneath.
I think you're so right there. I think so often in this day, the step worker that is becoming the average person, the disposable worker in our trade that I hate to say, uh, you know, if you want to get better, you have to understand occlusion. It hits every nuance of what we do. And being that removable technician and you knowing my roots, starting that way, I 100% connect with that statement. You know, as we move forward and talk about things, I think that, having a connection between two different times in this trade is something that, friends talk about. But realistically, my start and your start is going to be completely different. But the fun part about it is as we've got to know each other, there was a time. And I think that this is a fun little thing to talk about. Before we ever worked together, what did you think you knew about me from all those years online?
It's funny because the f- you existed online, especially through Dental Lab Network for basically the entirety of my career, right? So I started in 2006, and Dental Lab Network. I don't know when it started up exactly, but it was very, very shortly after that it became quite common to just hop on there, search for questions. And I remember this white haired guy with your profile there, and he had all the answers, right? All these long winded answers, and I had this kind of like a voice in my head about you, like as I was reading, and it was like a very authoritative, deep voice. And then the first time I actually heard you, I heard you online. I was like, this guy does not sound anything like what I thought he did in my head, right? So it was just really, it was just like very quite jarring almost.
Hey,
But I mean,
you're emasculating me right now, and I don't know if I like that, but it may be an accurate statement.
yeah.
Yes, I've hated my voice my entire career. Some people say it's soothing and that, but it's funny. But yeah, it's so funny about online personas, and I I love to hear your take on that. But, as we move forward in this, there was a time, and I think it's a fun part for you to explain, uh, how we connected to the point where, you were going to come to California. So let's just share the story. How did that come about? And, there'll be many follow-up questions, but I'm going to let you start and roll with it and lay out how you got to California.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it was just kind of like a progression almost. Like we moved from Dental Lab Network onto Facebook groups. And I remember a mutual friend of ours who will remain unnamed did some incredible stuff. He posted something up and it just caught everybody's attention, right? And we made like a little small chat group out of it almost. I believe. I think that's what it was. And we all just started swapping ideas, exchanging different things. And I remember one of our conversations we actually had was it 2020? I think it was around 2020, something like that, where we were hopped on during like COVID lockdown or something like that. And we were sharing a trick, a three shape trick. And you mentioned to me, you're like, oh, I wish we could do all this, but I wish there was a way we could modify the intaglio of full arches. And then I just chimed in kind of nonchalant and I said, hey, well, why don't you just use copy denture? And I remember that light bulb moment in your eyes and you're like, I'm going to go try that. Right. So I think that was kind of the moment, like the spark where you said, okay, maybe this guy has a little bit more to offer than just memes and random comments online. Right. So I think that's maybe one of the moments where it caught your attention. I remember very shortly after that, you posted up an ad online as well. And I think it was just kind of a spur of the moment. You were really you were inspired or you were feeling something. And you said, you know what, I'm looking for a protege, essentially. I was feeling inspired too. And I said, you know what, let me respond to it. And I did. I said, hey, John, really admire everything that you've been doing. I've been an admirer from afar for many years. You've been a mentor to me and would love to continue the conversation and see if there's anything here. And it just so happened that Lab Day West was coming up and I was slated to speak there. And you said, hey, you know what? Since you're out here, come to my lab. Let's give you a tour. You can come by and we can have a conversation in person at the very least and see where that goes. Right. So,
And it was a great first meeting. It was interesting to me because, again, you have your personas made up in the mind, and we had run into each other at shows and that type of stuff. It was really never a deeper conversation of a friendship or anything other than, hey, I know this guy based on how he shares information online. And I really connected with that up front. You were always very analytical and direct, but with you know, great compassion. And that connected with me because so often, internet and these chat groups are just, harsh and everybody's looking to try to be superior rather than help. And I connected with the fact that you were that way. But with that, we got you here and I want to think about, the moments prior to that, before we ever worked together. That persona that you had of me was, that long-winded guy. And obviously I'm still that person. I'm still that long-winded guy. I'm always going to be that guy. But here's the thing, man. You had this safe path in Canada. What made you willing to leave and come and work with me in California? What drove that?
there's very few places in the world that I actually see myself living, right? That I could live here is like a comment that is very rare in my vocabulary. And Southern California is just an absolutely beautiful place. It was one of those places you go visit and you're like, you know what, I could live here, right? So that was selfishly one of the main reasons, right? Like I said, the American dream is the white picket fence, the two children, a dog, everything like that. The Canadian dream, of course, is to move somewhere warm. So I was pursuing the Canadian dream. The bigger part of it really was that I was a good technician, I would say. I was confident in my abilities. I was doing good work. Like we had a very good lab. It was probably one of the better ones in my local area. I was very proud of the work that I was putting out, but it wasn't the type of work that I felt was doing my best work, right? And again, your reputation preceded you, the cases you were showing, the clients you were working with, and just the way you carried yourself, in a sense, it just really it just screamed excellence.
Oh,
So
that's
I just wanted to see, could I play with the best of the best out there, right? And really do my best too, right? So it was really a challenge to myself to maybe prove to myself that maybe I had something more to give.
so here's the better follow-up question. You're here, you're working. Was there ever a moment where you said to yourself, "Oh my God, what the hell have I done?"
Well, I mean, you know what? Never once in my mind did I have
Hallelujah.
a
High
doubt.
five. That's the
Did
right
I
answer.
did I ever have a doubt? I'll be completely honest with you. You go into these things. It's a gamble, right? You pick up your whole life.
Sure. Both
You
ways.
sell everything, and it's, again, like you said, where we were friends. We
Yeah.
talked online for the better part of a decade, really, at that point, every single day. And you think you know a person, but there's always that kind of unknown, especially when you are actually physically there every single day, right? And the truth be told, John, like, everything you are online is everything you carry every single day, right? And I
Well,
hope
thank you.
some of
Thank you.
that's
Thank you for
on
saying
my
that.
part,
Yeah.
some of that on my part hopefully was true too, right?
Oh,
And again,
100%.
like, I went in there with the hope of what it would be, and it really was everything that I thought it would be. So no, I never had a moment in my mind where I was like, what did I get myself into, or maybe I made a mistake. It was never any of that.
So was there ever a moment once you got here to Sunrise that you actually realized that maybe this is going to be a different place than any other prior places that you had worked, and why?
So, I mean, I only ever worked at one other place before you, right? And so I didn't have much to compare with. I mean, I consulted over the years with a number of different labs. So I had the privilege of going in and seeing how labs operate, right? And for the most part, we're all pretty much the same. Whether you're a small little outfit, or you're mid-size, or you're a big lab, we all really are kind of a similar culture. There's little tiny differences, but there's a lot of commonalities across the board. And I think that's why we all relate with each other too, right? So that's where we share the passion, we share and we commiserate over the daily things that occur when you're a lab technician.
Yeah.
um but at Sunrise, really, I mean, I went in there and I felt right at home. Even from the first meeting, before we ever even committed to something, it was another one of those, oh, I could see myself living here, I could see myself working here daily. So it's intuitively, it just felt right.
For me as well. And, there's always two sides to every story. And you got to realize when I'm bringing somebody into the country to hopefully take a role that was going to be more meaningful than just a tech role, uh, uh, you had to be vetted in some way. The your preceding persona online really started with what it was at. And I wasn't sure if this was all just that, a persona. You got there, it was exactly the same. I still struggled with releasing the hats. And I think every small lab that has an owner that is really vested in what we do, releasing those hats are hard. And you somehow allowed me to, slowly introduce that to you and give that to you. If we're going to put you on the spot here, could you name one thing that helped you grow while you were there? And maybe one thing that probably drove you nuts? Which of the two is more in your mind's eye? And I'd like you to share both of them if you could.
So, I mean, the latitude that you afforded me was probably the thing that helped me grow the most. And it was maybe part circumstance, as a lab owner, and now as a lab owner, I understand it even more and more deeply, that releasing those hats is very, very difficult, because it's your name on the door. Everything that goes out the door is signed with your name on it, right? And in Canada, it's funny enough. We actually have to stamp well, we used to have to stamp everything. It's all done digitally now, but you actually literally need to have a seal of approval before it goes out the door. So it's also kind of funny how you paralleled that kind of on your own accord, right? But very much so. It was kind of a matter of circumstance. It just so happened that somebody departed from the lab there. And before that, I did really kind of feel a little bit restricted, right? My first few days there, I did notice that you were quite hesitant to release certain things. And again, we're very skeptical up front, right? But I tried to tread carefully to find my way to break through that shell there. And ultimately, what ended up happening was I moved to the garage, is the best way to put it, right? And, I got myself a standing desk. And again, you were very, again, skeptical about it, but I think I've made you a believer a little bit. And
You did.
I really rearranged that space to make it my own. And again, the ability to be able to do that, to spend the time, and to just create a space that flowed properly was really kind of like an unlock in a sense. That's also one of the things I say that makes me really like kind of unemployable. Like besides going to Sunrise Dental Lab and deconstructing an entire workspace and then rebuilding it in my own image. Like there's very few places in the world that I could go in as a job to really be able to do that and to excel, right? Again,
Well,
like now
I
I have
think
my own
you
lab.
you see that I trusted you. I trusted you to make choices that, one, I didn't connect with initially, but I wanted to give you the freedom to do those things. But now, giving you the freedom, you got it set up, you're there. Okay, what drove you crazy? What did not make sense to you? What were we doing there that you were questioning? And I can't ever really have a memory of us arguing about any real things. I think that we were always on the same page. And that doesn't make for a great story. So I know every time somebody has something that sticks in their craw a little bit, and those are the fun stories. So I want you to share what was the thing that drove you nuts about me.
So I'll be completely honest with you. I don't remember any argument or any friction. And the truth
Yeah.
be told, again, you've been doing this for a very long time. That place was a well-oiled machine well before I ever got there, and it's still a well-oiled machine long after my departure, right? So there really was no friction in the workflow, again, because you have it dialed in. It's not like you were reinventing the wheel or anything at that point. So that it's difficult for me to say that there was anything that really drove me nuts. I mean, the California heat during, let's say, June, July, August,
Yeah.
September, sometimes into October. There were a few hot days, even like November sometimes. But even that, we retrofitted that garage with a couple of mini splits in there, right?
No, exactly.
So I mean, structurally, I'd probably say that was the biggest thing. And we were investigating, some different options, again, depending on where we were going to go with things. There were many
Sure.
grand plans that never came to fruition, unfortunately. But there were growing pains, right? Like there was definitely room to grow there,
Yeah.
and just finding the right path. So, I mean, structurally, literally the physical building itself could use a little bit more love, but I
Sure.
think you recognize that for sure, right?
Oh,
But again,
100%.
that's small potatoes when it comes to the actual workflow of things.
Yeah, I always said about laboratories, there's really two types in this world. The ones that are producing work and making beautiful things, and then there's those beautiful, palaces of technology that you see online. Those beautiful European benches and beautiful thing that you look like no work ever gets done in there because they're just too pristine. And I always, in my mind's eye, wanted to have something like that. But I connected more with getting the work out the door at a very, very high level. And, the monument to stroke my own ego was never the thing. So, you coming there and making it your own, I really wanted the place to be not just functional, because I knew it was functional. We were making things work, but having a comfortable place to work is something that I believe is super important. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. We give it a couple little extra questions here. And this might take a little thought for you to come up with it. You know, what do you think you learned from me that had nothing to do with making teeth?
So it's funny because we talk about online persona and how I carried myself for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I always kind of took a very optimistic, or like almost like too optimistic look on certain things. New technology was always new, exciting, better. And it was the best thing since sliced bread, essentially, right? My messaging and even the cases that would come in, I'd always almost look at them, how everything could go right. Right. And the kind of big difference I saw when I came to Sunrise was you looked at things not necessarily from a pessimistic view of how everything could go wrong, but it was more just based on experience. Just looking at all the different outcomes and taking almost a contrarian view, right? Not necessarily accepting it for what it was in front of you, but looking beyond, what the script was, looking beyond what just the records were. And it really did kind of color my communication online. I do take a little bit more of a contrarian view. And as a lab owner, I think it's very important to do so, right? Because my experience up to that point really was that of an employee, right? So the desire to have closure on a case, the desire to please, the desire to do a good job and to be positive, because being positive, nets you, more reward in whatever way. But as a lab owner, you really do need to, to have the shitty job of saying, "Hey, what could go wrong? Where are we missing things?" You really have to look at it from a more contrarian kind of view. And even nowadays, my interactions online, and again, that through line of excellence that you really kind of imparted on me. Nowadays, you see people posting things up online, 3D printed veneers and, all these different kind of gimmicks that you see that aren't tried and tested. Before, I would have absolutely hopped on all of those bandwagons blindly and touted just exactly how great they would have been. But nowadays, I really do kind of hold the line on that, because you have to see what really works, what's proven, and what really carries through that excellence.
Well, I think that's first of all, thank you for saying the nice things. The what I'm trying to probe out of you is life lessons. I think that wisdom is something that I have always been happy to share freely, and it's my wisdom, it's my path, and that's going to differ from yours. And very early on in my career, I was always looking for the answers. And, once I somehow received an answer that maybe was something that I wanted to question, well, I looked deeper. And I think that today, people are just wanting to get that damn case out the door, get it shipped, not doing anything other than looking at the RX, filling a prescription, and shipping it. So you sharing that wisdom, reaffirms that maybe you did listen to me once or twice when I was there, and I appreciate that. Now the hard part, we've stroked each other. We had a great time together. Now let's talk about, at what point did you know you were going to be going home?
So again, those types of decisions are not, spur of the moment decisions. It was decided quite a while before I ever told you. And again, the reasons for it you kind of covered in episode 13 there, and the reasons were absolutely had nothing to do with the work, right? It had everything to do with personal choices, circumstances that just couldn't work out, right? And we really did commit to making a life out there, right? We really wanted to go in there for the long run, but life circumstances just didn't allow for that. And I committed to that decision many, many, many months before that. There were many difficult conversations, both internally and externally, but I just it was difficult to, because you commit to something, you really wanted, like I said, to make a better life for yourself and do excellent work, and we had so many irons in the fire as well,
Yeah.
so many opportunities. We were out there, we were really selling ourselves, me and you were on the road and really had some really big, lofty goals. And beyond all that, though, it's like I said, I could see myself living there. I could see
Yeah.
myself working there. I could really see a path of succession, right? So it was not an easy decision, but it was, looking in hindsight, and even in that moment when I told you, it was the right decision. When I moved there, when I was working there, I never felt like it was the wrong decision to be there. But the departure decision, I never felt was the wrong decision either, right?
Well, let's talk about that day in question. You were driving into the laboratory, you're sitting in that car, today's the day. Today you're going to share the story with me. Today you're going to tell me you're leaving. What were you most afraid of that I would feel or say when you shared that information with me?
So it's funny because sitting in that car and saying today was that day was probably like a month's worth of days, like to be completely honest. And there was, again, different circumstances that, it just wasn't the right time. Right. And, but I knew that day it needed to be done because, again, I needed to afford you the courtesy and the respect and the time that you needed to, get to fill my space, essentially, right? So
Yeah.
it was really like ripping the Band-Aid off. So there were many days where I sat in the car and I said, today's the day. And, something came up and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Right.
Well,
But there came a
I
critical
know
point.
that we both had a bunch of stuff going on in our lives at the time, and we're both very open about those things, and that's both for us to hold on to those stories itself. But me envisioning 30 days of you lamenting over trying to tell me a story is heartbreaking. I
Yeah.
didn't really connect with that aspect. I thought you just came to the conclusion and you put the time together and said, this is it. So here's
Yeah.
the
Well,
follow-up. Here's the follow-up question on that. And this is the hard one. Okay. You absolutely knew how connected I was to you and what I thought of you. But did you ever think that I was just losing an employee, or did you think that I was maybe losing um, a future that I'd already started picturing in my mind?
well, I mean that was the difficult part, right? Because
Yeah.
it was also a future that I envisioned. And to kind of go back to your previous question that we kind of trailed off on, never once did I really feel like you would typically think that there would be some fear of like a blow up or some kind of negative reaction or something like that. And never once in my mind did I think you would react negatively.
Yeah.
That's the other part of it, right? That's kind of the compelling part is I I knew you well enough that I knew you would take it. You wouldn't take it well, obviously, but I knew you well enough that you were mature enough to handle the difficult news as well, right?
Sure.
So again, that's part of the reason why it didn't feel like the wrong decision either, right? Because you did make it easy. I probably walked through your shoes many times, many different angles, many different aspects, just to say it. And that's what kind of held me from ripping the Band-Aid off pretty much immediately. It was something that needed to be done sooner rather than later, and that kind of charted the path towards my
So
departure.
let's think about it this way. Uh, when you decided that you were going to leave Sunrise, was any part of it to try to figure out who Minh Tran actually was?
It's funny because I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no prospects. I had maybe some semblance of an idea that I, in the back of my mind, that I was going to open a lab, but it really was, again, yeah, a personal decision, right? And it was really not at the front of my mind at all. There were many other things going on in life at that time that I really needed to focus my attention on, and yeah, that was not something that I thought of, but it really was. These past couple of years really have been a journey about figuring out who Minh Tran was, right? And it's funny because we talk about succession, we talk about it all the time, right? And I've had many opportunities to purchase a lab, buy into a lab. Again, we talk about what the transition could have been between you and I.
Yeah.
But there's always this kind of like nagging feeling deep inside that I would have, inherited somebody else's lab either through purchase or whatever means. And, they built the systems. Like I said, your place was already a well-oiled machine when I
Yeah.
was coming into it. So it would have been a great opportunity as a partner or an owner because the systems were there. The employees already know what to do. Everybody has a standard that's already been set.
Yeah.
And I could have definitely carried that torch at the very least. I think I've proven to myself in that short time and proven to you that I could really carry the mantle enough that you thought that I would be a worthy successor. But there would have always been probably this nagging feeling that maybe I didn't earn it. I didn't earn my stripes. I would have been a little bit of a fraud, right? And I mean, you spoke about this in some of your episodes previously about, you're a fraud in some way, right? So whether it
Sure.
was the labs in my previous life or Sunrise, any lab that I didn't build with my own two hands, I would have felt like there would have been this doubt of if I could have done it myself or not.
Well, here's the thing. Now that you've been a lab owner in your own right, carrying all the hats that you saw me carrying, what do you understand about me now that you couldn't understand when you were just working for me? Now that you are walking that same line.
Well, just to continue my previous statement, it's for the last couple of years I've worn every single hat. Right, I was judge, jury, executioner, janitor, almost like an experiment to prove to myself that I could in fact do it all from start to finish. Right, it was really was a one man operation, minus the fact that I had to use an outsourcing partner, but even that I've managed to in-house now. We got a decent number of employees now. I've grown actually a little bit faster than I thought I would, but it's been very insightful. It's funny because I do listen to this podcast with these very headphones many late nights, right? So usually what happens is you're doing, putting out fires all day during the day. You're working, trying to work between the interruptions. And then after everybody goes home, after all the cases have been shipped, that's when my real work gets done, right? So into the late evenings, putting all those additional hours in, it's really given me a lot of insights personally into the journey. But hearing you, funny enough, going through and building this podcast, and each episode, it was just like, is he spying on me? Like there was always something relevant, right? All the little things that I guess I just had to touch my own burner to
Yeah.
find out it was hot, right? No matter how much wisdom you tried to impart on me, or even the conversations we had about it back and forth during my start, right?
Well,
But
I'll tell
yeah,
you. I'll tell you one thing. I just want to stop you right here. And, what I hear from you is that, you know, you being the successor and coming into the laboratory and taking that path, it easily could have been a future that was great and wonderful for you. But you have no idea hearing the words coming out of your mouth that you wanted to make something your own. You're not John Wilson, you're Minh Tran. You're gonna do it your way. You're gonna make your own mistakes, and no matter what I share and what I give back to this trade and what I try to lead you, you have to make your own mistakes. And now that you've been doing it for a couple years now and figuring it all out on your own, what stands out most, prominently as the thing that you wish you would just have listened to me on?
there's many things. One could have been, just stay. Just stay. That would have when it's 2 or 3 a.m. That could have that's when I'm like, I should have listened to him. This is the path that I'm supposed to be on, right? And there's many times when you're working on the case and you skip a step and you're just trying to expedite things because the doctor wants to rush you. Again, there's a very big divide between being where you are and being in the beginning. Like you said, you kiss a lot of frogs to find your Prince Charming, and so you bend sometimes, which unfortunately I don't like to.
Yeah.
But when that arch cracks or that verification jig does not fit that arch, you go, I shouldn't have skipped that step, right? So there's a lot, there's many times where the wisdom and the systems that of that well-oiled machine come back and nag at me because I know better, right? I know better, and for the sake of saving a client relationship or trying to accommodate a request, I really do need to hold firm on some things a little bit better, and that's something I've learned through, again, touching that hot iron.
Setting policy and
Yep.
coming up with your own path to the finish line and recognizing that you building a brand and honoring who you are some of the most difficult things for a startup laboratory to achieve, because you're setting precedent. You have the ability. You want to give that uh, feeling of I can do anything for you, doctor, and I'm going to make that happen if you give me the opportunity. Those are all wonderful things, and you've learned that each of those things have consequence, and how you structure yourself as you move forward in your career in the beginning years are paramount. We think that we have to say yes all the time. And, for anybody starting, you have to realize that yes has consequence. It feels good. So you learning that now is to me, invaluable to see where you're going to take it later. But here's a real good question. What's the one thing, maybe one thing that most people don't understand about owning a lab?
Well, it's the just because you're a good technician does not make you a good lab owner, right? And I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
it's kind of cliche to say that, right?
Yeah.
Because I really had that belief, right? In that I've been doing this at that point close to, I think it was 18 years at the point of my departure. This will be my 20th year. I know everything. I've been, the key person at two labs, right? I covered every single like any kind of gap that there could be. I've done the billing. I could do the paperwork. I've delivered cases. I've literally filled in every single hole that I possibly could. So yeah, and I'm just gonna find the clients and I'm gonna put a sign out on the door there, and the work will come, and it's just gonna be a well-oiled machine. And in the beginning, it absolutely was not. It tests every single aspect of
Yeah.
the skill set that you don't have, right? Making teeth is the easy part. At that point, I had the muscle memory for it. I know
Yeah.
the processes, I know the systems, but there's so many things that just come back and bite you that you miss, right? And I'm the type of person that, yes, I do excellent work, but there's leaks, right? There's leaks, and there's parts of me that are not the strongest, and I need to fortify those parts in order to make a functioning business. So that's really what's tested me over the past couple of years, is really training those muscles that I didn't have, right? And beyond all that, even, it's just a matter of mindset, right? Where as an employee, yes, I was one of those what we call the unicorn employees, and there's many people out there that give more than what they need to, because they don't treat it as just a job, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely excellent. And my goal never was to be a lab owner, and
Mm.
I'm what you call a reluctant lab owner, just because it was really the natural progression, right? You hit a certain ceiling where uh, you just absolutely have to. This is what I have to do at this point, because it's my hands would be tied otherwise. For me to go anywhere else and to rearrange another space is probably not going to happen. There's labs that would probably love to have me based on my reputation alone, but the moment I walk in those doors, after about 3 days, that they'd see that I was completely unemployable based on their systems, and probably disrupting all employee morale just based on the way that I conduct myself. And that mindset of being a lab owner, where everything really does fall on you at the end of the day, right? It's a huge kind of mindset change that you have to make, and there's a lot of responsibility and accountability that I was avoiding, right? I didn't want the accountability. I didn't want the responsibility. I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to, make sure that the product being put out, I put in the hours, do the communication, do everything. So everything that I was doing was really that of an owner, like the going through the motion. But the
That's
mindset,
setting you up for your future, right?
exactly. But the mindset of accountability, responsibility, and again, that name on that invoice going out is yours, right?
Yeah.
That's that last 10% really, and it's a huge canyon, a huge chasm to cross mentally, at the very least.
So the first case that you finished going out of your laboratory, boxed up, you probably worked it to death like everybody that is trying to make an impression on a client. Whether or not that client was somebody that you had a longer relationship with is inconsequential. Can you go back to the moment that you were sitting there boxing up that case after lamenting over hours of it not being perfect? And what did you think as you put the label on the box and got ready to deliver it?
So the first case I ever got was a single central. A single central.
Failed already.
Yep.
You listened to nothing, not one damn thing I told you. And that was the market you went after.
Yep, it was a single central. It was not a local client, right? And he sent it to me, and he says, "Hey, yeah, let's do this." And of course, I said yes. I didn't even have my equipment fully unpacked yet. Like we were like in the middle of building everything out and getting the systems in place. I didn't have my packaging ready. I didn't have bubble wrap. There was a lot of things missing. I'm not going to go through all the details and bore you guys, but number one, it was a single central, which is one of the most terrifying things you could possibly do.
Yes.
And number two, yeah, I spent the entire 2 weeks working on that thing, and I cut it
How
back.
many times did you make it?
It's like 3 at the very least, right? And then I cut it back, and then I stripped it away, and then I redid it, and then the core. Then I actually went out to Michael's, and I bought because it wasn't just a single central. It was a single central with a gold core underneath, solid gold. So the one tooth on the one side was vital. The other one was a endo tooth with a gold core on it. So I went to Michael's. I bought a gold permanent marker so that I could color the die gold.
So got
right?
the color.
So then the core material, the zirconia, when you put it on, it looked absolutely beautiful. It was a 1M1, I believe. When you put it on there, it just went gray, like dead gray. So again, I had to remill it in like an OM3 core to try and mask it, and then to layer and cut back. And of course, the reduction was absolutely insufficient on the facial side of it. So I'm trying to fudge the contours in there while doing as minimal cutback and build up as possible so it's not bulky. Of course, the patient is an Asian lady as well, so she's got these like shovel-shaped anteriors, so that's super flat on the facial, so you really can't put too much surface texture on there to try and break up the light to fudge it either, right? So it's very unforgiving, right? And my packaging then looked absolutely nothing like what my packaging is today. I overpackaged it. I went out and bought a whole roll of bubble wrapped that thing to all to all hell, taped it all up, double checked the shipping label and everything like that. It's so funny the amount of time, effort, and attention I put into that one single case that nowadays I wouldn't even sweat at, right?
Think about what you learned on that. That's the thing that I want you to pull out of this. Unmistakably, you were not going to fail. And whether or not that case got delivered on the first try or not is inconsequential. You were looking at every angle. You took what you knew and what you really didn't know, because everything that you did, you evolved on that case, just like we do on every case that we work on. And that's the path of how our judgment is built. And that's the part that, until you have to answer the call and do everything yourself to understand that, you really don't know what it really takes to do those cases. So good on you, and shame on you for not taking my path. But you're making your path the Minh Tran way, and I'm proud of you, because that takes dedication and power. Let's talk about our presence online and the things that we do for this trade. both of you and I think, give away an enormous amount of what we've learned over our career. I think that, uh, I don't want to ever say that you follow my lead on anything, but both of us have very similar understandings of this industry. Why do you do it? Why do you take the time? What does it do for you? And do you feel that you have some sort of penance that you have to do it?
So it's so funny because you've told your story, I think, on this podcast actually about the guy who didn't want to share with you, right? The parallels are so interesting, right? Because I had my start in the dental lab as some kid off the street. My dad pulled me into the lab and said, "Hey, you're going to come and take a summer job," and then that summer job turned into a CAD CAM job, and then it turned into where I'm at today. But all throughout that, there was a lot of stigma around being a CAD CAM technician or that gamer technician. There was a lot of really mean, really miserable, crusty old technicians that would just say, "Oh, your computer crowns are fine, but you'll never make a denture." Right.
Yeah.
Out of a computer, or you make the copings, but you can't stack the porcelain like this. It's got to taste just a specific way for it to be right. And so I never ascribed to that, right? So like I grew up in the dental lab, right? I was very fortunate that my dad was in the dental lab my whole life, and that was what I called the golden age of the dental lab, right? Where everything was quite literally made out of gold, and like the carpets were encrusted with gold, basically. But that age was like so different, right? The mentality of the guy next to you was your worst enemy because he'd steal all your tricks and tricks of the trade, like your little thing that you made out of gypsum, or your hand carved initials in your favorite Bard Parker. Those were like valuable, right? And people would build little case pan forts around themselves just so the guy next to you wouldn't see what you did to make that line angle look just that specific way, right? And sure. I never ascribed to that mentality, right? Like my big thing is like there's people being born every single second with a brand new set of 32 teeth. There's an unlimited supply of work for us out there, right? So that I really don't take that scarcity mentality, and just seeing that type of personality where you're trying to guard all your tricks and everything like that. I did it once, actually. I did it one time, and I said to myself, you know what, this little tiny trick, for whatever reason, I don't know why, it was such a stupid little trick, and I said to myself, you know what, this one I'm not going to share online.
This is mine.
This is mine. I'm going to keep it. It's my competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're not special. Really, we're not special. As much as you think what you're doing is special, somebody else out there in some lab, maybe you don't hear about it, maybe they don't have any presence, but somebody else out there has probably figured it out too, right? Sure. And my one trick that I was going to hold dear, somebody else figured it out, right? And they posted it online and they shared it and they gave it the absolute dumbest name that ever. And that drives me nuts because every time somebody refers to it now, they refer to it as that term. And it just kills me because I could have been the one to share it and I could have named it whatever I wanted.
Out, but I won't. I'm going to be.
You know what it is. You know what it is.
I absolutely do. 100%. And I'm with you both ways on everything when it comes to this. But we're not going to tear anybody down on this show. Yeah. We're only going to lift them up. But yes, we can have those feelings. But so true, those secrets, those special hard-earned things that we think that mean something. There's a million other people that have done it and done it probably better than what you're doing. So don't think you're so special. Give it away. Anybody that has a question. So you connecting with that is another reason why that we still are friends. And that's the real story here. We are continually talking almost every single day. Some of the hardest things for me is not being able to look you in the eye and have a meaningful conversation like we used to do almost every day. And those are the things that I miss. But here's the thing, Min, and this is something that you've shared with me in the past. You said that maybe someday you're going to walk away from dentistry. And when you do, you're never going to think about teeth again. Do you really believe that? And how can that be with all the passion that you have today?
It's so funny because when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, and every single day, every single waking hour, especially as a business owner, right? You give at 100%, then you give 110% of yourself at the end of the day, and it's really difficult to picture yourself as not working or not doing something productive, right? But it's funny because, again, in my personal life, I've been very, very fortunate that, well, number one, Canada has very, very good parental leave policies.
Yeah.
Uh, and in those 3 months, I really did not think about dental work at all. It's kind of incredible when you walk away from it, how quickly it shuts off, right?
Mm.
And it's funny because I talk about my dad a little bit already, but my dad was another kind of workaholic type, right? And he was the type that at 5 a.m. he was already out the door, and 10:30 at night was when the kids were all asleep was when he'd walk back in, right? So my dad was the textbook definition of a workaholic, and
Yeah.
it's so funny because he retired actually probably close to 15 years ago now, and he has not thought about teeth for one single day since. So maybe it's a
You
genetic
never have
component, or
you
yeah, or
never have
something like that.
conversations
Yeah,
with them about teeth today?
yeah. I thought maybe he'd contribute a little bit to the lab, come in, inspect
Right.
things, as like an
Yeah, yeah.
old grumpy guy walking around with his arms behind his back and just kind of inspecting things and, giving a seal of approval. But it's funny how disconnected he is from it, actually. And maybe it's just us, but everybody's a little bit different. But it's so funny how when you have the opportunity to really disconnect from it,
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind again, like that the moment I walk away from the bench, I probably never will look back. Right? It'll be something I'm very proud of, and 100% of myself too while I'm in it. But I already have that closure, knowing that the day that I decide that I'm done, I'm never going to look back at teeth. So
Well,
yeah.
I'm impressed that you could do that. And maybe it's just because it's been my entire life, 43 years now, being involved in dentistry to me, every day, every single day, I'll be on the golf course and I'll be thinking about teeth. I just, it's so much a part of me that I can't imagine that one day I'm going to say, I don't care. I'm done. It's over. We're moving forward. The chapter is over and I'm not going to do that. So when you shared that with me before, and that's really why I brought it up, because I think it's a unique thing to be able to do, have so much passion for something, to really strive to be so um, uh, good at something, to give your all in every day and then be able to flip the switch and say, I'm done. But that's your path, and it's interesting to me, and I think that some people will connect with it, and some people will maybe think of it my way. But now let's look at it this way. Our relationship, it's not over. Our working relationship obviously is. What would you say survived that empty bench story? Where are you gravitating to hold your time at Sunrise, and what are the things that are invaluable to you today?
So our working relationship actually isn't over because we're
Yeah.
sharing the stage next month, right? In a few
Hey, don't
weeks.
pimp it. That's coming up.
Well, we'll pimp it in a little bit, but it's funny because I carry so much of that forward, right? You talk about legacy, and you talk about how it shows up in a way that you didn't expect, right? And I did very good work prior to my tenure at Sunrise. But there was many things that if I never went there, I would not be cognizant of. I would not be aware of. There would be I'd do good work, but it wouldn't be excellent work in the way that you had imparted in me, right? So I carry that every single day, right? Looking at that case, giving it that just a little bit of extra attention, and looking
Yeah.
at those, even the offsets, like the little tiny things, making sure it comes off the machine just perfect. Even though you could do it with a burr and just zip it in one real quick second, right? But I'll spend 20 minutes just messing with like an embrasure or something in CAD so it is machined properly, and taking the time to go through the simulation and making sure that it calculates out properly and machines properly. So there's that tiny 1% that nobody's
Yeah.
ever going to notice, right? That just feels right.
Invisible
It's that
detail.
integrity. It's that
Those
integrity.
invisible details.
Yeah.
I love it, man. And, I like to reminisce. I do. I think about a lot of things, and I try to do it in my day. If I do something that I'm not proud of, I reflect on it. It's been a part of who I am in my life for a long time, and I've shared that it's easy to stick your chest out when things go well, but it's harder when you have to really self reflect on the things that didn't go so well, and that's what growth is all about. If you could go back to that first day that you walked in at sunrise and tell the old this version of yourself that you have all this information on, what would it be at that point?
Oh, you know, it's funny because I really wouldn't change a thing.
You learned something on the job there
Yep.
that when you were there, you've brought it into your life. It has been something there, but you didn't know it the day that you walked in that laboratory. Now you're in your own space, making your own way in this world. What is the number one thing that hits you that you feel that you have found some value for the time that you spent with me? And I'm putting you on the spot. That's the rule that I have here. I
Yeah.
can't make it easy. I got to give you something that you have to dig deep for.
Well, let me take a moment to really think about it. So, if based off of everything I know today, and me going in there, well, I wouldn't say naive, but maybe having a certain expectation, I want to give it the
Okay.
attention that it deserves.
I
And
appreciate that.
yeah,
It's hard. I know it.
it's actually kind of funny now that I think about it, because I carry it to this day, right?
Oh my God, that just killed me.
Yep.
So the greatest part about that, and let's share it for the audience, life is about giving, freedoms. We put systems in place. Are there to try to solve potential problems. From day to day, we all have good and bad days, but the systems are there to protect you. But systems are not infallible. And when you're not paying the bill, when that tool breaks or
Yep.
you double ship something or double send something and the owner is just going to come out of their pocket for that is different. So now you're sitting in your laboratory making your own decisions, having to deal with employees and seeing that you have felt exactly what we're stating is
Absolutely.
just awesome. I
Yep.
love it.
Absolutely.
Great.
And it's painful, and maybe it's a bit of karma. So
No, it's not. I never once, and I will give you this a bit of accolade. I never once thought that you haphazardly did anything. You did it with purpose. People make mistakes. And being who I am, I gravitated to understand that. And sometimes when it was costly, nobody wants those things. But the truth is I never thought that you were just messing up on purpose. Nobody could ever say that about you. And today, that's something that you have to really feel when your staff makes a silly decision, because
absolutely.
everybody
Absolutely.
does. And that's just life. But
Yep.
so the great thing about, sharing time with you, buddy, it just flows. I love our interactions, and, you'll always be that close person in my life. And dentistry aside, I like who you are as a person. You've made something for yourself. You're growing it, and I couldn't have more respect for you. As we move forward in this life, we all have chapters. And as I stated earlier, I didn't think that we were going to have, additional working relationships. I knew we'd always be friends, but let's talk about what's going on this coming September. It's right around the corner and I want to share it. So Min, tell us what's going on in Portland this year.
So Portland, Oregon. So the Oregon Association of Dental Labs and the Washington State Dental Lab Association have combined this year to make one single big Pacific Northwest conference. It's going to be, I think it's going to, moving forward, going to be one of the big shows that we're going to add to our roster in the year. At least I'm hopeful, right? They've done a very good job of inviting some really excellent speakers. Two of them are on this podcast right now. and you and I, again, for one night only, the band is getting back together, right? We're going to be sharing the stage together, and very much a continuation of this conversation where we kind of give our perspectives, right? It's going to be unrecorded. Nobody's ever going to hear about it again. Maybe there'll be some clips from the audience, maybe if they take some cell phone photos or something like that. But really, the spirit of this is really raw, unplugged, unfiltered, right? The opportunity for us to really riff off of each other and share our insights on, consolidation, AI, where the industry is, where we think it's headed, and really just sharing our insights and hopefully, inspiring some people to look at things in a different way.
It's going to be awesome. And you know what? We have an amazing sponsor. My good friend, Sean and Brandy Nowak from Nowak Dental Supplies have sponsored us to come out there. I'll tell you the truth. Min and I'd probably do it for free. The sponsorship just allows us to align with people that I have relationships with. Sean and Brandy have been, really strong proponents to my laboratory and the dental laboratory trade as a whole. They're just good people, and I couldn't be more proud to be able to represent them with my good friend Min. So coming in September here, it is the September 11th, I believe it is, and the conference is both the 11th and the 12th, but we're going to be speaking on that Friday. It's going to be like a fireside chat in a lot of ways. We want to get the interactions of the audience. It's going to be margins and meaning meets dental tech tips in a lot of ways, and we're going to be giving it away for free. We'd love to see you there, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share the stage with my friend Minh Tran.
Likewise.
So we've had some fun here today. We've shared stories, we've shared perspectives, we've shared everything. But one thing that we have to say is before every show, we have to say, what did we learn today? Well, we learned today that John Wilson is a pretty nice boss, and Minh Tran's a great technician, and now he has his path that is following the unmistakable mantra of margins and meaning. He's protecting his margins, and he's protecting the meaning. Thank you so much for listening. This has been John Wilson and Minh Tran for Margins and Meaning. Thank you.
Thank you.